Coming up on today's Locked On Dodgers, a tough come from behind loss for the Dodgers. Craig Kimbrel, we'll talk about him. We'll talk about Walker Bueller, and we'll talk about the Pirates throwing some of their best relievers and pitchers in the first game of the series. So that's what's on tap. So make sure to keep it Locked On Dodgers.
You are Locked On Dodgers, your daily Los Angeles Dodgers podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yo, Dodger fans. Welcome to Locked On Dodgers. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, the number one local sports daily podcast network, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. This is Locked On Dodgers, and you can find us wherever you find podcasts and YouTube simply by searching for Locked On Dodgers. If this is your first time listening, I'm Samperio. My co-host here is Jeff Snider. We're both lifelong Dodger fans who have spent some time doing different things regarding covering the Dodgers, but at the end of the day, we're here to bring you smart fans' perspective on our boys in blue, and we're here to talk Dodgers, Jeff, so let's get into it. The Dodgers were down 4-0 early in the game against the Pirates, back home at Dodger Stadium. They ended up hitting some home runs, getting it back 4-3, tying the game, and taking the lead in the eighth. And then Craig Kimbrel, who we talked a little bit about yesterday, of not having clean appearances and wanting to see him in a one-run game. But we got to see him in a one-run game, and it didn't quite go the way we would want it to go, and Dodgers end up losing 6-5.
Yeah, unfortunately, I don't think Kimbrel's had a 1-2-3 inning since his second appearance of the season. Maybe he had one more in there, but yeah, I think it's only one or two all season. I was hoping for another one today, or at least, I would have taken a shaky scoreless outing. Heck, I would have taken one run, but it was it was a bummer. I think I still believe that most of Kimbrel's issues have to do with rust and not regular usage, even though, he's now pitched, I think, 3 of the last 4 days. And so rust shouldn't be an issue, but maybe it takes a few appearances to kick off the rust. I don't know, but he's got to start figuring something out right now. And I think a lot of it comes down to fastball command. I think that because the curveball is great, it's moving, but he's not getting chases nearly as often. And I think that's because he's not commanding his fastball, throwing that where he wants to. And Kimbrel, when the Dodgers first traded for him, I think at his first press conference with the Dodgers, he mentioned that he thinks his struggles last year when he was with the White Sox were due to not commanding that fastball, not getting that first pitch strike. They say the most important pitch of baseball is strike one. And, Kimbrel said that was an issue. And I think that is the issue, or at least some of the issue. And that still could be due to rust. So hopefully, I don't know, he's going to be their closer for at least the foreseeable future. And hopefully, if they get him more regular rest, which Dave Roberts mentioned they're going to, hopefully we'll start to see that fastball command come back, which should help the other pitches be more effective.
This was the most Kenley appearance of Kimbrel's season so far. He started it off with the walk and then a bloop single. And then, they ended up scoring. And then a ball goes off. Freddie Freeman tries a backhand a ball that he could have just took one more step over and maybe had a better chance of getting it. But one of those where, things didn't go his way. But at the end of the day, you start off with the walk. Walks always get you in trouble. And, yesterday you had mentioned that we might feel more trust in him than we did in Jansen in years past because most of his stuff has come, off people hitting the ball, not necessarily giving away bases. He did give one away on last night. Ball got away from him as well. That put the tying run on second base. That tying run wouldn't have scored, and maybe things would have changed a little bit in that inning as well. So it's one of those things where, that we're kind of at the mercy of Kimbrel at the moment. They don't necessarily have the loyalty to him as they did Jansen in the past. So let's say in theory he continued to keep pitching poorly and never quite finds himself. I don't think they would hesitate to cut ties or figure something else out if need be. I don't think we're anywhere near that yet, but that's also, just kind of looking toward into the future. He has some time to figure things out.
Yeah. And for, perspective, I guess, Kimbrel now has 6 walks in 15 innings pitched this year. Uh, by comparison, Kenley Jansen last year in his first 15 innings pitched had 14 walks. And so it's not to that point. The walk definitely bit him today, but overall, that's been maybe the one concrete area you can say, okay, he's definitely been better than Jansen in this area, which is walks. And tonight he wasn't. And that's a bummer. But we'll have to see what happens. They're going to keep throwing him out there, and hopefully, like I said, he will start to perform better.
Yeah. All right. Let's talk a little bit about Walker Buehler. We've kind of exhausted the talk of what needs to happen in order for him to be successful. He wasn't able to do that or get his fastball back on track. Gave up a home run, 3-run home run, and then a solo home run, both on fastballs, both probably not the most well-placed fastballs, and were hit pretty hard. Pretty much no doubters. He did allow a walk on the first home run and I think a bloop single. So, not necessarily all his bad on the bloop single. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if there's anything else more we can say, but we have to bring it up because he was a starting pitcher.
Yeah, absolutely. I saw somebody, uh, I think it was Doug from Dodgers Nation, maybe. He said on Twitter that nobody wants to mention the sticky stuff issue as a possible reason why Bueller's fastball hasn't been as effective. It might be an issue, but I mean, after MLB, when I saw that tweet from Doug, I looked it up. And after MLB started cracking down on sticky stuff last season, from that point to the end of the season, Walker Buehler had a 2.54 ERA and a 2.86 FIP. And so he was good still. He was still very good. And I haven't looked at specifically the spin rate on his fastballs after the sticky stuff cracked down. But overall he was still very good, and really overall this year he's still been pretty good. In fact, these 2 home runs were kind of out of character for him. He's done a pretty good job of limiting home runs this year until this game. Obviously everybody knows the fastball is the issue. I don't know if anybody knows the answers, but I suspect the first people to figure out the answers will probably be some combination of Mark Pryor and Walker Buehler.
Yeah, that's something I had brought up, I think, a couple weeks ago about the sticky stuff. But like you mentioned, and he was good last year, even after they took that away. So it would, unless he found a way to get by with it last year and suddenly doesn't have that this year, it doesn't seem like that. It just, I mean, he doesn't have the giddy up on it. It just kind of sits there flat. And I know he went a little bit to the 2-seamer and he's on to the cutter to try to steal strikes here and there. So he's trying to find ways to do it. And at the end of the day, he's not still pitching well enough. He's just not pitching to the standards that we know. But we'll continue to give him that leash because that's all we can do. One guy that did look good though, Yency Almonte, again came in, pitched 2 innings, continues to show some nasty stuff, continues to show the ability to get outs, and continues to show himself as somebody that could be a contributor to this bullpen down the line.
Yeah, you never know who it's going to be. It's going to be somebody every year. You had Tony Sangrani, and you had Alex Vesia and Dylan Floro before that, and these guys who relief pitchers. It's like, where'd that guy come from? Oh, it's the Dodgers. Yeah, and Yency Almonte might be this year's version of that. He looks really good, and I think the fact that he can go multiple innings is big. It's a different kind of relief pitcher than some of the other guys they have. They do have a lot of 1-inning guys, and so maybe they won't use Almonte as frequently, but use him longer when they do use him. It's a really good thing to have. And they got through this game with just Buehler, Almonte, and Kimbrel pitching, which means now the bullpen is set up for the rest of the series.
Yeah, unlike the Pirates bullpen, we'll talk about it a little bit later. First, let's talk about BetOnline. BetOnline.net is the number one source for all your betting needs and sports info. They got all the latest odds, all the latest news, and all the latest sports developments this year, including basketball playoffs, which is now in the finals, MLB scores, fights, boxing, UFC, whatever the case, and even next season's NFL futures. So go check out the odds. Go see what looks good to you. Just looking at NBA basketball right now, they got the Celtics Warriors game up there. The spread is Celtics plus 3.5. So that means if you think the Celtics are going to win or at least lose by less than 4 points, then you should go take the Celtics. They got the money line. They got the over-under on the total and over-under on individual scores. So they have the odds for all the other things going on, NHL as well, UFC if there's any fights, and MLB for sure. So go check out betonline.net. They got all you need right there for all the sports. If you're trying to follow sports and sports betting, sports wagering, it's all right there. Head to the website on your laptop or mobile device today. Learn more about the trends, learn more about the action. Bet online, where the game starts. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day every day. For your next listen, check out the Locked On Now podcast, because the Locked On Network can take you through the season like no other network, and the Locked On Now podcast has recaps of MLB games with analysis from our local experts and our personal expert here, Jeff Snider, and it's free and available wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Jeff. So staying real quick in the game, Kevin Pillar got another start. Cody Bellinger was a late scratch. He has a adductor strain. It looks like they announced after the game he'll be day to day. Left adductor strain, so we might see a little bit more Pillar out there. We did see Gavin Lux in left field today. Misplayed a ball out there. I don't remember. I don't think it ended up costing them. I don't think it was any that a run ended up scoring, but just the way they're gonna have to move people around here. Edwin Rios in the lineup again, did have a home run, but did strike out 3 times. His home run once against a left-handed pitcher. So, there's just a lot of wackiness going on with Max Muncy out, who we got an update on that they're, taking the time with him, and, he'll head to Arizona, and then he'll need some rehab at-bats once he's ever cleared and ready to go. And yeah, I think that's all the updates on the offensive end. Just anything there from that side that you want to bring up or talk about?
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Lux's misplay actually might have ended up helping the team, because I don't think the ball should have been caught. I think it was going to be a double. He just played it into a triple, but then on the next pitch, that guy got picked off third, and he probably would have got himself picked off second. And so it might have helped the Dodgers to have that guy be over there where they tried to do their squeeze bunt.
Yeah, I don't know if he didn't expect the guy to go 3. The throw to third was a good throw, but it didn't look like
He
him
took his
trying to get
time
a guy
getting
out.
to the ball. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was it wasn't Lux's best play. And in a perfect world, especially with Muncy out, I mean, Lux should be playing second base every day, and I think that's probably the plan in a lot of ways. On this day, they already planned on giving Chris Taylor the day off, and then Cody Bellinger needed the day off at the last minute, and so they had to shuffle. They put Hanser Alberto into the lineup, which then pushed Lux out to the outfield and pushed Pillar from left field to center field. So hopefully Cody gets better soon, because without him in center field, the defense definitely takes a hit.
Yeah, and I mean, even with Cody not hitting as well, we haven't seen anything from Pilar yet, but that doesn't mean we're not going to see anything. But just based on what we've seen in the past, we'll see. But on to better updates on the pitching staff side. Clayton Kershaw and Andrew Heaney are both taking steps toward returning. Clayton Kershaw threw a bullpen, threw 40 pitches or just shy of 40 pitches. Dave Roberts said he was outstanding. He used his entire pitch mix, and there'll be another bullpen session here in a couple of days. Andrew Heaney threw a 2-inning simulated game on Monday. Threw against Pillar, Hanser Alberto, and 2 pitchers from the Rancho team. He'll throw a side session during the week and head out on a rehab assignment next week, assuming everything goes well. So 2 starting pitchers on the mend, probably back for the Dodgers before the end of this new month coming up in June. But it does lead to beg that with everything going on, assuming no other injuries and Kershaw and Heaney coming back, that will have 6 men for what's usually a 5-man rotation. So the conversation is, do the Dodgers do a normal 5-man rotation and leave somebody out, or do they go to a 6-man, or are we just going to have to wait and see how all this plays out?
Yeah, these questions usually get answered by injury. We'll put that disclaimer here, but that's a boring way to podcast. Just say, oh, somebody will get hurt. Yeah, the other thing coming up, I don't know if we've ever really covered it. The MLB pushed back the deadline again to cut down to 13 pitchers, but I think it's now mid-June, and so they have a couple more weeks. But it's going to be around that same time that Heaney and Kershaw are maybe coming back, that they also have to cut 1 pitcher overall. So yeah, it's obviously Buehler and Julio and Anderson and Gonsolin have all kind of earned their spots. Well, Anderson and Gonsolin have definitely earned them. Julio's been good. Buehler isn't going anywhere. And so maybe I don't know, like they started with Gonsolin and Anderson being piggybackers, but I mean, Anderson's thrown over 100 pitches in the game this season. He doesn't need to be a piggybacker. And I wonder if since there are so many injury question marks, if they do have all six of those guys healthy at once with the compacted schedule and everything, it might just make sense to go with a 6-man rotation, even with a 13-man pitching staff, because guys going having that extra day of rest every time through can theoretically go a little deeper in games, and so you theoretically don't need as many relievers, and you can still do the Oklahoma City shuffle if you do have a game where a starter gets knocked out in the second inning, and so you have to option somebody. They've got guys who can fill that role of going back and forth between the minors and the majors. But yeah, when you get into some of the specifics where we talk about David Price has actually been pretty darn good this year, but he still does he fit on this team once everybody's healthy and the roster goes down? Who knows? But I like the idea of a 6-man rotation when we're looking at those 6 guys in particular.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, assuming we keep this health going, 6-man sounds good to me because as we saw last year, the guys got burnt out toward the end of the season, especially Julio and Walker. By the time the playoffs came around, and then they were asked to do extra on top in the playoffs, it just was a little bit too much. When you got guys like Heaney, who's now coming off injury. You got guys like Kershaw, who's now coming off injury. You got guys like Gonsolin mainly, who's never thrown so much in a season, and if he continues on this pace, he'll blow by the most innings he's ever thrown. So it makes sense to do it. And yeah, like I said, you might lose a little bit in terms of your relief staff, but the Dodgers have a lot of guys that can go 2 innings as relievers. So in theory, you get a 6-man rotation even if you lose one reliever. If you're starting, it's just like last night. If Buehler goes 6, Amante goes 2, and then Kimbrel goes 1. That's all you really need. And different ways you can go about it different ways after that. So I think it makes sense to do a 6-man. I just think I'd rather have all these guys have that extra rest, be able to get deeper into games, and kind of work on pitching the third time through a lineup for some of these guys who you might not need it in the postseason, but you'd like to see what these guys can do, how they can mix it up. Especially a guy like Buehler and Julio who are going to be your top 2 guys going into the postseason. You want to see how they can maneuver and get through a lineup 3 times. They both done it before and they both can do it. Buehler's obviously pitching a little bit differently than before, so he's got to figure out a different way to get by. And then Julio's just, still working on getting deeper into games and, being able to have that trust from Dave Roberts to go deeper into these games.
Yeah, that's what I was going to mention. You can tell they're being cognizant of Julio's workload after he had last year by far the biggest workload of his career. And a 6-man rotation would allow them, like you said, to instead of pulling him at, earlier in games, he's just not pitching as frequently. So he can start, getting the pitch count and the third time through the order, throw 100 pitches and face the lineup 3 times, because I think that will be important in the postseason. I do think that's part of their goal this season is to get him there while still managing his workload. And I think a 6-man rotation, since you've got 6 good starters, is a really good way to look into doing that.
Yeah, and as we talked about before, I mean, I guess right now, let's just say Walker Buehler continues to pitch like he has been, which is good, not the best. And let's just say they do have this 6-man rotation. You're looking at this 2 months from now. Are the Dodgers still looking for another starting pitcher and on the trade market?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on who's on the market. I think the Dodgers are always going to be interested in improving their team in July. And, if all these guys are healthy, I don't know, it's hard to see them trading for a starter if these 6 guys are all healthy. Uh, but, Tyler Anderson, not that we're, living on borrowed time or anything. I do think he's a solid pitcher. And I think his performance this year has been legit. But chances are he's going to hit a stumbling block or 2. And, all these guys, I think mostly what it boils down to is I have a hard time all 6 of them staying healthy the rest of the year, and possibly even 2 of them at the same time being hurt like they have with Heaney and Kershaw. And at that point, yeah, if there's a really good starting pitcher on the market, let's think about going and getting him.
Yeah, and as we talked about before with the Dodgers, it's always different because you're not just getting a starting pitcher for the sake of getting a starting pitcher. You're getting somebody that's going to slot in at the top of a rotation, at least top 2, maybe top three. You're pushing it a little bit if you give up a little bit less. So we'll see what happens. But just at the very least at this point, in what could be a crazy starting pitching market with not a lot of starters available, a lot more teams trying to go for the extra playoff spot. The Dodgers wouldn't be sitting in a desperate position. Hopefully, they'll be sitting in a position of, okay, we can address it, or we don't have to address it if we don't need to. So, all right, we're going to talk about the Pirates and how they've set themselves up for the rest of this series after game one. So make sure to keep it locked on Dodgers. All right, Jeff, let's finish it out. So the Pirates, seemed to go for the win once they had the lead. They used somebody that they were maybe thinking of using later in the series as a starter. They threw one of their better relievers almost 40 pitches for the last 2 innings. Even though the Dodgers didn't end up pulling the win, they seem better suited for these next 2 games. I mean, they're already better suited to win these games since they're a better team. But from what we've seen so far, hasn't necessarily played out in the standings against the Pirates. But at the very least, the Dodgers are looking like they have an upper hand a little bit more so than just talent advantage.
Yeah, absolutely. And the I was telling you before we started, I'm trying to find the game that it was. April 19th, 2019. Dodgers were playing the Brewers, and the Brewers went all in. Josh Hader ended up pitching. I think he went 2 innings, ended up throwing close to 40 pitches, and the Dodgers scored 3 runs off him and won the game. And so they were able to steal that Hader game and knock him out for the rest of the series. And here in this game with the Pirates, we've got David Bednar, who I think maybe you understated it when you said one of their better relievers, by far their best reliever. You could make a case one of their only good relievers. And he threw 50 plus pitches. And so he's going to be done for the series. The Dodgers won't see David Bednar again this series. And, they did hit him okay today, but that's not going to happen very often. The fact is, David Bednar is a great pitcher, and getting him out of the series, it would have been great if they could have stolen this win and win the game that burns him. But even losing the game, him throwing that many pitches drastically improves their chances of winning the next 2 games.
I was muted. And yeah, I mean that's the name of the game, and what we've seen from the Dodgers in general. Like, we've talked about maybe sometimes them being a little too patient, with starting pitching, but when it's the first game of the series, you're trying to get into their bullpen as early as you can. The Dodgers didn't quite do that because the Pirates starting pitcher almost went through 6 innings, but then they did end up, getting to Bednar, and the Pirates ended up using him a couple times. I think it's one way, chasing wins in general. Will Smith said it after Sunday's game where, every game matters. We learned that last year, and it's kind of where the Dodgers are at, but it's a little bit, better for the Dodgers on the Dodgers side because they do have more talent. They do have guys that, they don't have to quote unquote chase wins because realistically, pretty much anybody in their bullpen, kind of other than Craig Kimbrel right now, is somebody that would be able to go at any point, at any inning, and you would feel comfortable, from Phil Bickford to David Price. I mean, David Price came in his first outing back from injury was in a close game in the 7th inning, and I didn't feel nervous at all, really. So we're in a little bit different spot there, but I do think for some of these other teams, the Dodgers can take advantage of this, and hopefully they do take advantage of this because they had thoroughly dominated the Pirates in the past, and then now this year the Pirates. I mean, that it's what 4-1 the series right now, or 3-1 the series right now, but it's just we're not used to losing to the Pirates as Dodger fans.
Yeah, it doesn't happen very often, and the Dodgers, the way they're set up, they are never going to go all out for a win in May. They are, they're going to do their best, but can you imagine them throwing out, name a good reliever the Dodgers have, even Kimbrel or, Vesia or anybody saying, okay, go throw me 53 pitches so that we can win this game because we have to win this game on May 30th. There's no such thing as a must-win game on May 30th for the Dodgers. And for the Pirates, it wasn't must win, but it was like once they had that lead, they were like, okay, we're going to go all out to win this game. We've got this lead, so we're going to try to win this game because if we can win one of three against the Dodgers this series, that's a solid series for us. That's kind of their approach. And now that they've won this first one, now their mindset is, well, if we could steal one more, we can actually win the series again. And that's hopefully it's not going to happen because, like you said, they used their best reliever and he's done. And a team that you could tell they're not, even though they're going to sell at the trade deadline, you can tell they're not interested in trading David Bednar because they're. I think they want to. I don't think if they were shopping him, they would have been that reckless. I think reckless is the right word. I think it was a terrible idea to have that guy throw that many pitches, and I hope he remains healthy because I really like him. He's a good dude. He really nice guy and hopefully a future Dodger.
Yeah, just on the flip side, on the Pirates, they are down a lot of their normal position players, which at the end of the day, they're replacing guys that are slightly above average with guys that maybe are average or maybe slightly below average. So there's not a big difference. And, just it's just one of those things where, as a Dodgers, you're going to get everybody's best effort. It doesn't necessarily always work. But I mean, the guy who started for the Pirates, I don't even remember his name, but he had like a 10 ERA in May and then ended up, doing pretty well against the Dodgers. And then, just everything else that happened. They did get those 4 runs off Buehler, but that was it. So it's just a matter of, sometimes these games happen like we talked about before. But the very least, when these games happen, the Dodgers were able to take advantage and set themselves up better for the future. And that's just, kind of the thing that needs to happen. I know Eric Karros, I think, mentioned that, this could be a trap series. If they had gone down 4-0, we would have talked maybe a little bit about that. Like, the Dodgers just, coming off a long road trip and everything else and, all that kind of stuff, maybe you could throw that in the mix. But with the team that was down bad in terms of injuries and everything else, it was good to see the fight and good to see that, I don't think they're treating it like a trap series. I think it just happened to be that the guy had their number early on and then they figured it out.
Yeah, his name's Zach Thompson, and he has a very Justin Verlandery face, which is not a compliment.
Yeah. All right, that covers all the topics we had in mind. Is there anything else you want to add, Jeff, before we head out?
My only other thing that I don't know where to fit it in is I don't know what to make of Edwin Rios. He went 1 for 4 with a big home run and 3 strikeouts. And the 3 strikeouts came against right-handers, and the home run came off a slider from a lefty. He's homer off Madison Bumgarner and Dylan Peters, two lefties who, and Bumgarner, at least you could understand because Bumgarner didn't get the memo to not throw him a fastball. But Dylan Peters got that memo and it still went out. And then he struck out the other 3 times. So I don't know. I've still, I'll take what I can get from him, I guess. But I hope that everybody gets healthy and he can go back to playing not quite as often.
Yeah, at the very least, his last strikeout was more competitive than his first two. But at the end of the day, with the runner right there and just needing a fly ball, it would have been nice to see him get that fly ball, take that step into, productive out, getting that run home. But the home run helps, and that's what as long as he can do that, like we mentioned a few episodes ago, he can just do that every 3-4 games. Then at the very least, the Dodgers will have something in their lineup that's better than nothing in terms of until they wait till Muncy comes back. So.
Yep.
But yeah, that's all for today's episode. That'll do it. We'll be back tomorrow to talk about hopefully a win against the Pirates. It'll be Julio bobblehead night. So that'll be fun. It'll be the Taco Tuesday. The mariachi will be out there. So I'm sure there'll be a lot of fun stuff from outside the game and hopefully during the game. That's gonna do it for us. Thank you for making Locked On Dodgers your first listen of the day. If you need another listen in your daily podcast listening queue, add Locked On MLB with Paul Francis Sullivan, a.k.a. Sully. He brings humor, passion, and a unique perspective on every team and the biggest stories around the league. Follow the #1 daily league-wide podcast, Locked On MLB. For us, you can find us on social media, Twitter and Instagram at Locked On Dodgers. Jeff is on Twitter at Snider. I'm at Samperio. DMs are open on all those accounts if you need to get a hold of us. Other ways to get a hold of us are email, lockedondodgers@gmail.com, or voicemail text at 323-863-5625. We're here every weekday morning, and we hope you'll be with us. When you get in your car, if you're at home, to your smart device, a podcast, Locked On Dodgers. And remember, you don't have to agree. You just have to listen. Have a good one.
We'll talk to you tomorrow.